How's it going, ladies and bruises? I'm Bobby Sixkilla and welcome back to Sekimeiya. We are back home in Shinoya's apartment, after having been tailed, potentially, almost certainly, as we walk through the park. We don't know who was tailing us yet, but I'm sure we'll figure it out in due course. She's very freaked out about it, after all, because they could be someone who's already travelled back in time anyway. I went to the kitchen. If I could eat something, that'd give me something to do and allow me to trust my own judgment a bit more. I took the prepped meat from the fridge. I didn't have a microwave, so I still had to use the stove. The frying pan was dirty from the last time, so I listlessly poured dish soap on a sponge and scrubbed the pan before rinsing it. I dried it with a hanging towel and put it on the burner with the food. I knew not to turn on the intensity all the way up, or it would burn easily. I stood in front of the pan, focusing only on evenly heating the meat. Seconds later, I turned it around with a knife and waited a bit longer for it to be done. Only one bowl was still clean, so I used it to bring the food to the living room. The pieces were small, so I didn't have to cut them. I shortly brought one into my mouth. The inside's still a little cold, but the taste isn't bad. Fortunately, I'll probably have no future as a fry cook. Unfortunately. I don't think that's unfortunate, though. Well, actually, maybe that's fortunate. Yeah, exactly. I should just try not to think about it too much. Even if I was being followed, what's most important is still that the Sekimeiya can be taken before the 15th. And if I try to enter the tower during the night and I'm caught before I can trigger the alarm, it could all fail. My main two worries are not knowing where the Sekimeiya is and not knowing how to travel a lot of days back in time. I could go to the tower during the day and try to find the cabinet. If it's there, I know the mechanism behind the alarm will already be working, so I could try to conspicuously change the past by the following night by entering the tower and forcing the cabinet open. I suppose it's possible it already is in the event room, if nobody's allowed in for now. There wasn't a camera in the storeroom, so maybe I could see if the handle of the hidden door is still there and if it really leads outside. Using that hidden partition is the best bet to make it to the tower during the night. I could either try to enter it from the outside, or wait behind the movable wall during the day, where I won't be found before the tower closes. So the other issue is a truly concerning one. I would break open the cabinet to activate the alarm. That would lock me in the tower with the person in the security room. However, even though we had to spend 12 hours inside, that wouldn't necessarily repeat. They explained to us that there was a way to open the exit before the maximum time. Both the security member and Ashiya can work together to remove the shutter. On the 15th, the system didn't appear to be working for either of them. I can't be sure that the same will happen before that day, though. What if interfering with the mechanism was part of the attack? If so, it's very possible it'll still work before the 15th. This means that I can't assume that I'll have 12 hours to experiment with the Sekimeiya. To avoid being seen through the cameras, I could go to a place without them. The attic would still be locked, so there wouldn't be many options. There, assuming the person in the security room doesn't leave, I could try to mess with the Sekimeiya. Maybe I'll touch it and appear somewhere that's being recorded, though. If that's seen from the security room and I don't have a reply to whatever I'm told by the guard, it's incredibly likely they'll unlock the exit well before the 12 hours. I keep eating the last slices. Even though the handle of the hidden door was removed, since the door had two holes, we were probably able to deduce that the handle used to have a keyhole. So even if the handle's still there, I'll probably need a key in order to open it. But if I can see that I can open the door, it's possible I have a good way out. During the night, I could enter the tower through the door and quickly go to the Sekimeiya cabinet, trigger the alarm, then as soon as possible I could leave with the Sekimeiya through the storeroom. If nobody's watching that side of the building, and I hide my face from the cameras, I could bring it home and experiment with it here. This could be the ideal course of action and only requires that the storeroom door actually leads outside, and that I can pry it open. Did that bring serious risk? Even if I was later found outside, I could touch the Sekimeiya and go to the past before my identity was given away. Then though, I would lose the Sekimeiya. Why does the hidden partition in the storeroom even exist? It's possible Katai lied when he said that he didn't know about it. If Ashiya were completely aware of it, there's no way they'll allow it to be opened if it's found. Wait. There might be a way to solve the problem of not being able to figure out why I went so many days to the past. It's very possible that the time the Sekimeiya spent out of the cabinet was a factor to determine the time travelled, even if there's more to it. So after all the time I spent in the tower, what I can be almost certain of is that 1 minute stored equals more than 1 minute travelled. If I can't open the storeroom door, I can still make it inside the tower during the night. If I wait in the partition past the movable wall, assuming someone else knows about it, doesn't check it, Then I could activate the alarm and leave the Sekimeiya out of its cabinet for a really long time. How would I prevent the exit from opening before the 12 hours were up? I'd be talked to from the security room, so maybe I could reply and act as if I really am from Shin. How would you stop the Sekimeiya teleporting back to the cabinet? That would be my problem, because then it like powers down because of the cold. Could I try to negotiate for hours or somehow convince them not to open the exit prematurely? If I could think of something to say so they would keep me there, I could be in hallway A all the time. Assuming 12 hours pass, just before the deadline, I could run to touch the Sekimeiya, and if at least 1 stored minute equals 2 minutes travelled, I would go 24 hours into the past. So as long as I can make it to the previous night, to a time before the tower is open to the public, I could change the past and repeat the process. I could progressively go back days without understanding how to travel such a long distance at once. While I considered my options further, I went to the kitchen and left a bowl in the sink. Is this a good idea? I'm not sure I could pull it off. There are drawbacks too. The person in the security room could see that the Sekimeiya is outside the cabinet and demand that I put it back, knowing that the cold temperature is essential to keep it safe. And if 1 minute stored doesn't equal to 2 or more minutes travelled, I could appear during the daytime, so I couldn't repeat the process until the same night I would have started from in the first place. What would even happen if I went back to the 30th and could save Mia? Where would I stay? Since the past would greatly change, the current version of me who travelled from the 15th would very likely be overwritten. Even if my original self still goes to the hospital on the 30th, that me would go to live with Atsuki, so I'd instantly have to figure out what to do in a world with 2 versions of myself. That aspect of the loose plan that I had still brought me nothing but regret, as much as it was undeniable that saving Mia would be the ideal outcome. It really wouldn't mean that to me. I was the one whose entire existence would be like a foreign body. Oh, I don't actually think this can work. If the Sekimeiya really was in the shop on the 30th, as long as it wasn't immediately brought to the tower, there could be a point where I couldn't keep progressively going back 1 day at a time. There'd eventually be no Sekimeiya in the tower to travel with. And there's something else. I only thought of this idea assuming that I can't open the storeroom door, or that it doesn't lead outside. This means that the way to trap myself during the night would have to be by going to the tower before it closes and waiting in the hidden partition of the storeroom. So if I can only go back 1 day at a time, I'll eventually reach Sunday, when I won't be able to enter the tower during the day. The last possible night where I could do this would be Mondays, this night. So Mia died on a Saturday, and I can't save her if I don't figure out why we're so many days back. In the end, no matter how much I thought in the living room of my house, I had to go to the tower. During the day, I had to try and find the Sekimeiya and check the status of the storeroom door, so that I could determine the best course of action. I rested my head on one of the pillows. After recalling the footprints in the snow, I felt reluctant to leave my apartment again. I would leave, just not immediately. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by all the doubts I had. I stood up and turned off the lights. I heard a faint sound. After suddenly raising my head, I noticed it was coming from next to me. I reached for my purse and took my phone out. The number calling me was displayed on the back screen. I read it a couple of times, wondering if I recognized it. I don't think I've ever been called by this number. Since there was no name below it, it wasn't on my contacts list. It's also not the number I just called earlier. They hadn't hung up yet, so I debated what to do. Should I pick up? Doesn't seem like anyone has in the hospital. It was very rare for me to receive a strange call. Given my situation, I hesitantly pressed the accept button. Hello? Oh, you picked up. Good. Hey there. I frowned, unable to recognize the relieved-sounding voice. Are you Shiroya? Huh? Yeah. Who are you? You were at my place earlier, remember? My name's Vaisude. Ah, from the apartment. Oh, here's the cop. Are you the one who's currently living there? Yes, I'm sorry to suddenly call you like that. I got your number from Cecil's phone. What? Why? I asked that, but I figured I already knew the answer. He had recognized me. I just need to ask you this first. You were in Ashiya Tower during the terrorist attack on December the 15th, right? December 15th? What are you talking about? What? You know what I'm talking about, right? That's why you came to my place. I do, yeah. I was there. There was no reason to keep hiding it. No, man. He already thinks he's got mental problems. If you hide it, you're gonna make him think he's crazy. That's not nice. Jeez, put the poor bastard out of his misery. I see. I knew I wasn't wrong. There's a reason why I'm calling you, and I don't know how this will sound though. What is it? Do you know what I experienced? You read my thread from November, didn't you? That's how you found my apartment. What did you experience? Exactly what I wrote about. From the 15th of December, I suddenly appeared on the 24th of November. Once again, there was no reason to deny it since I'd shown up at his place before the 15th and been one of the people to get trapped. From his perspective, it was fair to conclude that I'd also travelled through time. I see. You're right, I also travelled back in time. Really? So that is what happened. How though? I breathed steadily, wondering what to say. I don't know, I'm still confused as well. I didn't want to reveal the Sekimeiya's powers, as I'd been fearing someone would get to it before me. You don't know? Something happened inside the tower, right? How is it possible that I appeared in November like that? If I'm telling the truth, I don't know. I also suddenly travelled through time when I was in the tower, but I don't know why. I'm kinda glad I do know that I wasn't the only one though. So, time travel really is possible. I was so scared I'd lost it completely. Do you really not know anything about what happened? I don't. I went to the event with a friend, and we all got knocked out by smoke that came out of nowhere. I know I travelled to the past, but not anything about what happened in that place. What the hell, I don't get it. How's that possible? A lot more people must have also travelled with me then, right? It is possible, but I don't know. You're the first one I've come across. Well, this is ridiculous. I know, I can still hardly believe it. Why didn't you say anything to me though? Isn't that why you came to my place? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't know what to say. It was hard to ask out of nowhere if you travelled through time. Ah, I understand. The same thing happened to me. You kept going after a pause. Then what will happen in 2 weeks? Do you think it'll repeat? It's very possible, but I'm not sure everything will be identical. Yeah, that wouldn't make sense. I have no idea how it'll come to occur, but it'll happen again. People will travel to the past. I can't believe it. I'm as confused as you are. So, are you okay now? I figured getting caught in that attack and suddenly travelling through time must have been hard. I know I didn't take it well. I am, don't worry about me. I have a question though. Did you let your past self see you? My past self? No, I didn't, but I did see him. I came back to my place on the 25th of November, and in the afternoon, I saw myself coming back from work. I got scared when I heard the sound, so I escaped without being seen. When I started to understand what had happened to me, I managed not to be found out pretty easily. Being either at home before the evening or at my parents'. So since it wasn't his intention to change the past, he didn't. I'm incredibly relieved I was right though. You really can't imagine it. I'm still going to move, but I'm so glad I can stop doubting what I felt sure of. It's good to hear. I'm sure everything will be alright. Yeah, I think so too. You're with the police, right? I saw your picture in your apartment. Yeah, I'm afraid I won't work there much longer. Honestly, I have been told in the past I'm not always mentally stable. I'm relieved that it's not at the point that I feared, and saying my job would be very irresponsible and dangerous. I didn't share it at first, but I think that just made it worse, so I've already accepted my condition. I winced sympathetically at what he was saying. His voice still sounded very calm, but there was a definite trace of sadness in it. It didn't seem like he wanted to specify any details, so I didn't ask for them. I'm sorry, I hope it gets better once you move out. Thank you, I do as well. I have a question. You were still working with the police up until the 15th, right? I was, yeah. Then, is there something you know about the attack? Do you know what could have happened? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know anything. It was a highly entertained possibility that Shin could have been planning something, but I don't know anything beyond that. I see, that's fine. Sorry, I'd love to give you more information. Ashiya quickly put out a statement about their version of what had happened, but nobody really believed it. We thought that something in the security system had gone wrong because Ashiya were having problems unlocking the way in, and the communication with the interior suddenly cut. Yeah, that's what happened inside as well, but we couldn't figure out what had caused it. I see. I apologize for not being more helpful. Don't worry, I wanted to ask just in case. I wasn't sure whether asking my next question was the right call, but I had to know. Oh, something else. I didn't mean to be rude or anything, but were you in Ciutadella earlier? The park? No, why? I thought I might have seen you there, was I wrong? Yeah, I'm still at my apartment. I must have been mistaken then. Yeah, it wasn't me. I see, sorry. I didn't want to push it, but I still halfway doubted him. It's fine. I guess this is all I called you for, but thank you for telling me the truth. Hearing that really was a relief. I'm glad. Do you think you'll be okay? I will. I'm not sure what I'll do now, knowing what happened, but I'll manage. I hope you will too. Is there anything else you'd like to ask me? Yeah. Do you know the time you travelled through time on the 15th? The time? Must have been close to 4 o'clock, I think? I don't know then, I travelled hours later, so I still don't know what to think. It's unbelievable. I just can't wrap my head around it. I know. Can you think of anything else that could be of use? I'd really like to help understand what happened. This is way too crazy. I don't think so, no. I see. Do call me if you think of anything then. Even though we still can't understand anything, at least now we can be at somewhat at ease. Okay, I will. And if you realise something, or can think of anything of what happened, please tell me. I'd really appreciate that. Alright, thank you. After a few seconds he said goodbye and the call ended. So that's that. I left my phone on the floor and rested my head back on the pillow. I briefly looked at the time, which had shown 4:58. I'm glad all that makes more sense now. It's probably fine that I revealed that I travelled through time. At 4 o'clock we were in the attic, and I think Sai and Akito had already escaped from the bedroom. I might have been right with what I thought before. I forgot to ask, but Shin definitely didn't approach him. It seems that all the information he could give them would be the very basic details behind the alarm. Although I really doubt he would. He knows he's in the past, so if someone approaches him asking questions without knowledge of what happened on the 15th, it'd be easy to conclude that they're not good people. It didn't sound like he was taking that badly though. I guess he'll be at his parents' house from now on. If everything were to repeat, his original self would still live in his apartment on the 15th when he travelled to the past. I figured I didn't have to think too hard about it, so after wondering if there was anything else important I could ask him, I shut my eyes and buried my face on my pillow. Well, that's interesting. A while later I went to the hallway. I tended not to enjoy taking showers during the winter, but as the heater had not been working all day, it felt like a good idea, and I just wanted to do something. The heater had been working all day, sorry. Technically, I'd showered 2 days earlier on the 30th. I went to the bedroom and selected the clothes I usually slept in. I had a bathtub in the bathroom, as my apartment wasn't big enough to have a dedicated room for it. I wasn't good at taking short showers, so I generally opted to take baths to avoid using up all the hot water. I turned on the water and waited for it to heat up as I left my nightwear ready. I opened the door and stepped out. Thanks to the heater, the hallway felt cold in a pleasant way. How much time had I spent there? I tried to keep my mind blank, but it wasn't easy, especially after Vaisude's call. As usual, the bath had been relaxing, but it also made me more tired. I didn't usually like how my hair looked after using the hairdryer, so I only used a towel, leaving it slightly wet. I tried not to soak it too much since I had to sleep soon, but that hadn't worked out, and I wasn't sure where the dryer even was. No sunlight was left. I approached my phone and glanced at the time. 7:19. The previous day I'd gone to sleep very early, so my body was demanding that I repeat the schedule. I'm not sure this is going to go well if I'm going to spend the entire night in the tower soon. I had a pretty sad thought in the bathtub. My birthday was on the 19th of December, and Atsuki's was on the 21st. Earlier that year, the three of us had celebrated Mia's, but it could have been the first year I could recall where Atsuki and I wouldn't be together those 2 days. If we'd continued in the tower, and the exit hadn't opened, we would have spent them locked inside. I was already moving the world away from that reality though, so existing alongside another self of mine could have already been inevitable. The thought of having to miss those days was pretty disheartening, even if they would technically happen. But I knew that I wouldn't let myself be tricked. I wouldn't abandon the wish to save Mia because of that. If I did, spending Atsuki's and my birthdays together wouldn't mean anything anymore. Yawning, I brought my phone to my bedroom. Sometimes I got pretty hungry after bathing, but I really just wanted to lie down. The time had been passing so fast since I made it home. I turned off the hallway light and walked to my bed. The blinds were still down, so I turned off the light there too and covered myself with the blankets, their soft touch highlighted after the bath. I'm gonna wake up on December 3rd. Atsuki's probably suffering by himself in his house, or maybe he's in the hospital. This is about the time I woke up on the 8th, and he was there. No matter what I do, things will never be the same, will they? I have to go to the tower tomorrow, don't I? Tell me which options I have. Assuming I'm able to find the cabinet, what would I choose? If I can't decide now, how will I be able to decide tomorrow? I was so comfortable in my bed that it was almost impossible to believe that within a few hours, I might have been living in a world where I wouldn't really be myself. Instead, I could have just ended up in a prison cell. The choices I had weren't just freeing, but daunting as well. If I changed the past, I'd pretty much be sacrificing myself. It's already changed in a very minor way, but that might not matter. Even if I can't ever use the Sekimeiya again, if I simply prevent Atsuki and myself from going to the tower on the 15th, the other version of me will never travel through time, so both of us will persist. That is assuming I don't get dematerialized by a paradox. Since the past can be changed though, I should probably not be worried about that. Hopefully. It was just so frustrating to think about. Like in the bathroom, I forced the thoughts away and tried to breathe calmly. I looked at my window. It was still pretty early, as I couldn't see the light through the gaps. It seemed I'd woken up as early as I'd gone to sleep. I felt well rested, so I sat up instead of lounging around. I'd realised that the time I had left was potentially scarce, and it felt like a long time since I'd appreciated ordinary days so much. I didn't want them to end anytime soon, so I got out of bed right away. The time was 7:45. I set the phone back on the table, while a glimpse of the dream I'd just had returned to me. I wasn't able to piece it together properly, but I knew it had been very similar to the one from 2 nights prior. I'd been in the tower, working through an infinite cascade of headaches caused by the Sekimeiya. Maybe it's a little interesting that I'm dreaming about this. The body I'm currently in was never in this tower. This means that part of me that's causing these dreams must have travelled alongside my consciousness from the 15th. I was no expert on how dreams worked, and there wasn't much I could really glean from that anyway. Actually, wait a second. I went 15 days back in time, but mentally I still aged those 15 days. I'm not exactly sure how old my body actually is after doing that. But wouldn't that mean that my birthday is technically December 4th from now on instead? So tomorrow? I'm just going to ignore that, it seems easier. I agree. I stood up as I stretched my limbs and walked to the wardrobe while rubbing my eyes. Sleeping so long would actually tire me out sometimes, but I felt completely rested. The radiators had been emitting heat for a long time, so the temperature was very pleasing. I drank water and ate a few almonds. For some reason, I felt the impulse to go out, just like the first day. I tried to open the door and check the temperature, but it didn't open smoothly. When I peeked out, I understood why. It's snowing. The sun is rising from behind the mountains too. It wasn't very dense snow, and only a bit of it had piled in front of the door. It didn't feel unbearably cold, so I stepped back in to go grab my phone and put on my coat. I remembered the footprints from the previous day again. I didn't want to let them intimidate me, so I discarded the thought. Despite that, I knew that finding out who was responsible for them, if I could, was a fairly good idea. Probably, because they're probably still following you. I stepped out, but stopped myself as I was walking down the stairs. Maybe it's too early. It's also colder than I thought. I didn't want to turn around so soon, so I kept going down, taking a few uncertain steps. There was nobody outside. I was the only person I could see being hit by the falling snow. I put on the heavy hood and began to make distance from my apartment. I previously wandered around Yushibana without a purpose, but the weather no longer made that a good idea. So I decided not to turn back. I actually had to go somewhere. It's so early though. Should I just go to the tower? I didn't change direction, well aware that a part of me didn't want to go back there. Would I only go when I made up my mind? If so, that would never happen. My whole life I'd always avoided going near that building. After the hellish day I'd spent there, that resistant part of me had only gotten stronger. Last night I decided I'd go today though. I really should. I should, because if I don't, Mia's fate could be set in stone at any time. I'd once thought that it had already been set in stone, even after learning of it the second time. Even with all the dilemmas I had, the impulse to go outside took priority over them. It was a strange new sensation, and I hoped it would persist. Going to the tower would remove the faint traces of freedom I was feeling. The streets were completely desolate. I'd gotten pretty far without noticing it, absorbed by the same persistent quandary. Am I just afraid of being alone in a world where Mia's alive? I don't even think that I'm concerned about getting caught by the police. Right now I'm all by myself, and I don't dislike it like I have in the past. It's probably because I know it's not indefinite though. If that's all it is, can I just go talk to Atsuki? If I explained everything to him, both of us could travel to the past and save Mia. Then another version of both of us would remain, but it wouldn't have to be by myself. He'd probably agree to it. But by travelling from the tower alone, I'd willingly avoided that already. Hadn't I travelled to the past precisely to erase Atsuki's plan, so that he wouldn't have to remember everything? At once, I realised that the sight in front of me was not one I'd seen before. The foggy ramen street extended far ahead of me, but only a handful of people were walking, covering their heads due to the snow. I'd never seen it so devoid of life. The entire area had begun to be coated by a thin layer of whiteness. I'd gotten there early enough to witness it before it was manually removed. I crossed the empty road. On the other side, I looked around me and saw that every shop was closed. For a while I didn't move. It was such an unusual sight that I had to wonder if it made any sense. It's really never been like this, has it? Everything was closed and there were so few people. It was hard to think I was at the same place as always. Even the times when I went to school through Ramon, there were a lot more people, right? It was all sort of around this time. I'd been going to Ina Cafe, but I started to doubt it'd be open, and nothing else was. That didn't feel right. I don't think I'd ever seen it closed, not even on a special holiday. It was at a branching street further up, so I kept going, assuring myself that it would be up and running. Sometimes I'd see people out walking their dogs so early in the morning, but the snow made that impossible. When someone finally passed me by, I glanced at their face, and it didn't seem like they found the state of their surroundings strange. I got more and more confused. Was the lack of people normal? Perhaps the few memories I had of my morning trips to school were mistaken. I was sure of one thing though. When I'd taken Ramen Street to go to classes, it had been to stop by Ina and eat something. While I couldn't be sure about the other places, I knew that not once had Ina been closed. Starting to get impatient, I accelerated towards Costa, the small street I'd always turned to. When it finally came into view, I raised my head, letting the falling snow collide with my face. Soon Ina came up and I slowed down. It really is closed. I stared at it from afar. It shouldn't have been that ridiculous, but a surrealness similar to the one I'd felt in the tower started to creep into the edges of my mind. I wasn't wrong though. I'd never seen it closed before. I could be sure of that since it was an emblem of a coffee mug on the shutter that I was certainly seeing for the first time. I continued getting closer without looking away. As I did, I thought of a time Darfei had said that they didn't close a single day of the year. Could he be sick? No, that's not it. Everything else is closed too. I tried to think of a reason, but I couldn't. The lack of people in open stores. Something about Yushibana was off. I got to the shutter and tried to find a note explaining why it was closed, but there was nothing. I took my phone out and looked at the time. It was 7:59. It's possible he recently started opening later. That'd be weird though, since students usually buy pastries here on the way to school. The classes started at 8 o'clock and I'd always been under the impression that Ina opened half an hour earlier. I stepped under a thin stone roof to shield myself from the snow. I was lost, not knowing what to think. Surely Yushibana would soon look as it always had though. I spent a couple of minutes crouching down under the roof, almost afraid of the silent street. Wait, there really is nobody here. Why do I not see anyone going to school? I didn't understand, that didn't make sense. Classes must have been starting, but everything around me was desolate. I used to see a few people going to school when I went through the centre. Why have I not seen anyone? I hadn't gone to school in months. Had something changed? The schedule maybe? Some emergency? Was December 3rd a holiday I wasn't aware of? I couldn't be sure of anything, as I'd spent the entire time in a coma. What was wrong? No matter how much I looked around me, the absence of people wasn't normal. And even if for some reason there was no classes, Ina should have been open. I stared at the snow piling on the ground. Beyond my safe place, the white curtain extended ahead almost like a fog. I didn't have gloves, so I attempted to keep my hands warm in the pockets of my coat. Snow had slipped its way inside. However, the cold ate at my fingers. I didn't know what to do. There's nowhere else I could go, and the temperature was imposing, rapidly becoming oppressive as soon as I'd stopped moving. I should just go home. I hung my head. I'd been feeling fine when I left my apartment, but the atmosphere outside was completely unwelcoming, repulsing me, so I stubbornly stayed there. Perhaps the mornings in Yushibana had become a lot more empty than before, but I knew it wouldn't be like that all day. Shortly, Ramon would fill up as always, practically bustling by comparison. clenched my hands and shuffled my feet repeatedly. The cold was sapping my energy bit by bit, so I had to keep confirming that I was capable of movement. I knew I wasn't wrong. Ahead of Ina was a clothing store that had always been open at that time, but I could see it was closed as well. The Yushibana I was in didn't make sense, it was abnormal. How long had I been there? I was too cold to curl my fingers around my phone. What am I doing? I need to go home. Remembering the heater, I almost stood up. However, looking at my right, I noticed that some people had arrived at Ramon. It didn't feel normal yet, but it was getting there. I just had to wait a little more. At any point, one of the shops had to open, and I could enter it to eat something. Are you actually going to stand there and freeze to death like an idiot? Did that really happen though? Everyone I could see walked ahead, individually, either hidden behind an umbrella or disappearing into the distance without looking anywhere else. I turned abruptly to a nearby sound. An old man was walking toward me from the wider street. He hadn't seen me, and his tired eyes stared ahead as he walked through his own breath. I forced my body to stand up and stepped out from under the roof. I'm sorry. Oh? He suddenly noticed I'd addressed him and focused his expression, trying to hear my voice. Is it normal that everything is closed? Shouldn't Ina be open already? Huh? Ina? He frowned and looked at the shutter. I've never been there, but it's true that it's usually open. You think it should be? Yes, I think so. It's not only Ina though, everything's closed. He looked all around him. That's true. I don't think they should be closed today. You should probably only have to wait a little more, it's still pretty early. I see. He was about to drop it, but I insisted before he kept walking. But aren't there far fewer people around than usual? It's Tuesday, right? There's no reason why that'd be the case. Fewer people? You think so? After a bit he shook his head. Like I said, it's very early in the morning. Maybe I'm wrong, it's just the impression I got. He shrugged and gave a short, dry laugh before nodding his head and parting. I'd felt before that I might have been a little paranoid. Was that all it was? I stepped back, shaking a bit of snow off my head. Maybe I'd internally exaggerated things, but I didn't think my memories were off. I should just wait there, that's all. At some point, nobody will be able to say that it's too early for the stores to be closed. I'd been below that short roof for some minutes, and while I couldn't stay there much longer, there was nowhere else to take shelter. However, the thought of going all the way home before eating anything was intimidating. Alright, we need to wrap this one up because we're out of time for today, but maybe the Sekimeiya is like, I don't know, what has it done to this place? I don't know. I guess we'll figure that one out, hopefully, because it does seem very, very strange. It's happened gradually. When we first got back it was kind of normal, then there was less people, now there's no one. Why though? Maybe the Sekimeiya transferred its powers to us and we're making everything go back in time. Maybe we keep going back in time and we're going further and further back, I don't know. I guess we'll see. I hope you guys enjoyed it, thanks for watching, thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.